So this is Arnaud Lauret. If you were lucky, did I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah.
Good. If you were lucky, you would have heard him talk yesterday. During day one, you were talking about, I think, Open API spec.
Yes, Open API specification.
So Arnaud has agreed to join us on the condition that we do this kind of facilitated talk, which I like. So it won't be the traditional PowerPoint. I'll ask you a few questions. We'll have a discussion specifically around, and I gave you a fireplace. I don't know if you noticed.
Oh, right? Thank you.
Around the idea of API style guides. So it's very cozy. I even wore my special jumper for this part. Okay. So if you haven't met Arnaud before, he actually has two personalities. He's the API handyman. And for some of you might have seen this name other places, but you didn't know until now that this is what the API handyman actually looks like, which might be a letdown or might be an improvement, I don't know, depending on perspective. But you definitely have a great social presence. But what some people don't know is behind this, the secret identity is Arnaud, the IT architect, right, at AXA. Yeah. So you have one foot in the community, the API community, one foot in the world of banking that I think most of us live in. How different are those worlds?
Oh, the community is really far ahead of the banking system because we have big organization, old infrastructure, legacy systems, and we cannot move as fast as people think.
Right.
So in bank, we see that, okay, we have to innovate, we have to make APIs, we have to create products, but we also have to deal with the legacy system, the organization. And changing mindset is not an easy task. It's not only an IT concern. On the IT side, we have many ideas. We want to use cloud services. We want to use really cool new technologies because we like that. But just because we like it is not a way of doing things. We must have a real purpose. And the purpose will only come from the business side.
Right. So is it a case where you see people know what they should do? It's just difficult to actually execute, implement, to apply the ideas?
You mean, for example?
In terms of, on the one hand, in the community, we talk about things like hypermedia or microservices or moving quickly, right? But then when it comes to the practical nature of it, is it a case where inside the organization like a bank, we know about these things, we know the value, but it's the execution of it that's difficult?
Yes, because the execution needs to change many things, and unfortunately, we don't have an ideal bureaucracy.
Right.
So we have to find windmills.
Okay, yeah, tilting at windmills.
Yes,
right?
And even if we have ideas, and we are still restrained by the existing things. So step by step, slowly but surely, we are changing the way we are working. We are splitting monoliths in smaller, manageable things that can evolve, but it takes time, and sometimes we don't have time, just like with PSD2.
Right. Well, you've talked before about API-centric design. It sounds like you're touching on this a bit, but what's the journey like in reality to embrace an API-centric strategy?
Oh. To embrace the API-centric strategy, you will need to change the mind of everybody in the company. It's not API, even if API means application programming interface. It's no more a tech problem. It's also a business problem, but you have to change the mindset of the IT side, because many people were working on SOA systems, on mainframes, and with a very IT point of view, just like, oh, don't talk me about functionality. I just know that I have to create a new column in this Oracle database.
Right.
Okay, but what is the purpose? By thinking from the bottom to the top, you will only do a total mess because you will not respond to a need to a functionality.
So bottom to the top means I have data and I'm just exposing it? Or I have a model?
Yes, I have data, I have complex internal processes, and I'm only exposing them with the API, but there's no point in that.
Right.
No purpose. You have to think first about what is the functionality, what is the product, what will I give to my users, internal users or external users. And for that, we need the business. We need the business with us to explain the strategy of the company, and we need the business to forget that they think they know the tools they are using. Some people from the business side are using the same tools for decades.
Right.
I know some people from the business side who know really well how to use mainframes. You know, these black screens with green characters, and they are completely forget the functionality and products point of view. They only want to add this data into his database.
Right, so they tell you, we need this green screen to be changed.
Yes, yes. Right. They don't come with a need. They come with a solution.
Right. Okay, definitely a challenge. The other theme that has come up a lot is the ideas of centralization, decentralization, right? I asked that survey question earlier. Do you see that popping up a lot in your work?
Yes, yes, because I think that everybody start to make project the agile way, right, with autonomous teams building autonomous project, autonomous software, and there's a good and a bad side of that. They are more fast, they are more efficient, they can build things really quickly, they can build things that will meet expectations. But in the end, we will, if it is done without control, and we will have many microservices who do not speak the same language, who do not share some concepts, and it will cost a lot of money to maintain that.
Right. So this idea that we give teams autonomy, but then we end up with 25 different, interfaces.
Yeah.
On some level, we've kind of said it's okay what language you use or what little database.
The programming language is not a problem. The problem will be, as explained by Eric, when you have microservices, the only thing that matters is the interface.
Right.
And we need a certain consistency. I don't mean that we should have really strong governance with the API police coming with guns and another thing to say, oh, you have done things badly, but we need a certain consistency. We need to have things done correctly, because if you let people do what they want, they will invent fancy things that will surprise the people who will consume these APIs,
right,
and it will not be efficient. People will lose time to understand this totally new API, which is totally different from any other API in the company. If everybody use almost the same concept, do the thing almost the same way, and go in the same direction, it's easy to work with all these different services who are created with different programming language, different technologies. But if they share some really basic common concepts, it's easy to use them. And if they share not common concepts just inside the company, but outside, because we work many times with people, with contractors, right, people outside the company. And if you do APIs just like nobody. People will come to work with you and say, "Oh, this is very complicated. I do not understand what you are trying to do. So I can work with you, but it would cost 3 or 4 times the price."
So like years ago, we had the SOAP messaging format, which was very prescriptive. And now we have this much more, I guess, freedom-oriented. I can make many design decisions about the interface. And what you're saying is each of those decisions could be different with each team, and we end up with this challenge. So what did you end up doing?
So I'm still working on it.
Right.
It's only on the beginning because I started as I'm trying to evangelize people, and being.
I guess it's the style book. Is that?
The style book is only a result of my of the problems I had. So if you start to do APIs, you cannot have a single person trying to tell everybody how to do things, because there are too many projects. You can be everywhere, so you need to build teams, or at least to take some other people and allow them to get more skilled about API design, about how things should be done. And then these people can work together and with the development teams to ensure that everything is done the right way.
Okay.
And you also need to automatically check things, because when you design an API, if you use tools like the OpenAPI specification or RAML blueprints or other tools that generate those descriptors, there are many things that you could check automatically. Just URL formats, properties, names, types, and so on. There are many things that can be checked automatically, and doing that can avoid very annoying thing, just like, oh, this project is done, it's in production, it's working well, but the API design is very bad.
Right.
And it could have been seen on the design time.
So instead of having a bottleneck of, I don't know, center of excellence for APIs, and they look at every single API that's created, you're saying there's a way to, like, almost as Eric describes, you instrument the design somehow.
Yes, yes. And then by doing that, you will always need human validation, because there are some functional points of design that are very complicated and machines are not yet able to grasp that. But you can then focus on this really important design matters and let the machine just check your design like you check the quality of your code with things like just like SonarQube.
Right. And I know as part of your work, I want to make sure you get a chance to talk about is actually looking at different style guides that I guess you've collected across the web and putting them together.
Yes.
So maybe what is a style guide for?
So the idea behind the API style book and behind all my API on-demand stuff is that I fell into many traps. I've done many mistakes, and I want to share what I've learned. I want to help other people to avoid this trap.
Right.
And the API style book, the idea was so many, not so many because there are only 12 for now, but some companies started to share the API design guidelines, which is really interesting because this is the first step toward having some kind of consistency in API design in a company, which is really important. And I decided at first the idea was only to collect them, to give a single place to find all API guidelines. And then I had the idea of reading them all to extract the topics which were covered by all these guidelines. Because as an API designer, as an architect, as someone who tried to do some API governance, I had some question about, how do people handle security? How do people handle long operation? in synchron operation, and many of our questions, and all these questions have answers in these guidelines.
Right.
And by having categorized the topics covered in these guidelines, you can easily access to answers to all these questions.
Okay.
And then you can create your own guidelines and do what you want. A next step that I want to do is that I talked earlier about enforcing design within tools such as OpenAPI specification. I'm thinking about something that's based on your style guide, create automatically some rules that will apply to OpenAPI specification or remote specification or what you want.
Okay. Excellent. So underneath this is what? Some kind of language format? That's what you're saying?
For the moment, all the data presented in API style book comes from some YAML files.
Okay.
So because I'm very fond of having documentation as data. It's really important for me because if you only write prose, write text, it's not. It can be used by machines to do things just like propose Eric with web concepts. So having all this information as data, I created with website. I will also create an API providing all this data, and it may be the way I can create this tool I'm talking about.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. Any questions about style guide or anything API related for Arnaud? Okay, I actually have a question for you. I run into this a lot, where the pain point that especially banks and large organizations face is they need to keep some type of consistency across the interfaces, like you said. So should they be going to a site like yours to find the best style guide and apply it, or is there more to it?
I think a good way to start is to read them all and see if one of them can be used as a start for the company. But I don't think that they should be used blindly. All of them present almost the same thing, but I think that having some kind of some kind of template to say, oh, we have to cover this subject in style guidelines and so on. You can create your own,
right? Because
I don't like to use blindly things without thinking of the context of the company.
It makes sense. So PayPal style guide may not be, I don't know, Bank A's style guide.
Yes.
Okay. And is there a way for people to contribute? I know there's probably a few style guides that exist in organizations.
Yes, so if you know about some style guides which is not on the API style book, you can notify me and I will see all the data are in some GitHub repository, so you may fork it and you may make a pull request to add your own guidelines, because if you just give me the link, I will have to read the guidelines and select all the topics. I will do that anyway, but you should try it, because I think that it would be interesting if everybody try to speak the same language using the same context. It will help us to not waste our time trying to figure out what people are saying.
Okay, very good. I think it's important work, and I hope that even from this talk, maybe someone wants to share their own set of guidelines as well. Thank you, Arnaud.
Thank you, Ronnie.